Nothing beats a good old heel turn in pro wrestling. Turning to the dark side seems to get more people talking than a guy turning babyface, and that's because heel turns are supposed to come across as a bit more shocking and a bit more unexpected. Sometimes it doesn't work, but a well executed heel turn has the chance to live on forever as an unforgettable moment. Today I'm going to take a look at a few of my favourite heel turns. Some will be obvious of course because it would be a sin to leave off some of the more well known turns, but I'll also explain why the turn went well and why I personally enjoyed them. So here's some of my favourite heel turns in pro wrestling. This one falls into the obvious category, and it's one that's been talked about frequently, but that's for good reason. The Rockers tag team was a hit with younger fans and also female fans. Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty incorporated a lot of tandem high-flying offense into their moveset that excited fans. They had a carefree attitude that people gravitated towards, and just their overall presentation, from their entrance music to their ring attires, told viewers that hey, these guys like to have fun, and you're gonna have fun watching them wrestle. All good things must come to an end though, and after some issues behind the scenes, and because Shawn had his own desire to begin a singles run, the Rockers would break up in an infamous promo held in Brutus Beefcake's barber shop. In the run-up to this historic moment, the tag team were having some issues in the ring, and the WWF magazine even covered the potential breakup of Shawn and Marty Jannetty. Marty said if Shawn wants to make this work, he has to shake his hand and put their problems aside. Shawn not only shook Marty's hand, but he gave him a big old hug, and the fans popped. Just when everyone thought the Rockers were back on track, Shawn kicked Marty in the face and he proceeded to put Marty's head through the barbershop window. Shawn kicks his former partner while he's down, he grabs the WWF magazine and he rips it in half. Shawn had turned to the dark side and he'd go on to become the Heartbreak Kid. The rest is history. Leaving the Rockers was the best thing Shawn ever did in hindsight, and as for Marty Jannetty, well, yeah, it wasn't so good for Marty.
I don't owe you no explanation. I don't owe you people a damn thing.
Stone Cold said that this didn't work out too well, and many fans online agree with Austin, but I didn't think Austin's time as a heel after WrestleMania 17 was all that bad. I thought some of Austin's promos were great when he went back to the dark side following his match against The Rock, but I also understand why others wouldn't have liked it. Some would actually consider this as one of the worst heel turns in pro wrestling. Austin vs. Rock took place at WrestleMania, and Vince McMahon made an appearance towards the end of the bout. Fans were left shocked when McMahon and Austin joined forces to ensure Stone Cold left WrestleMania as WWF champion. This one was made all the more noteworthy due to the history Vince and Austin had. It was through their rivalry that the Mr. McMahon character became truly prominent on weekly WWF television, and seeing Stone Cold partner up with his boss like this felt a bit strange, but man, what a way to end WrestleMania. Think about it, this heel turn closed what many consider to be the greatest WrestleMania of all time. The vast majority of fans weren't ready to boo Stone Cold though. It was always going to be a tough sell, seeing as fans had cheered a heel Austin back in late 96 and 97, and it was those cheers that turned him naturally into a babyface. The WWF would have to edit pre-tape shows and add boos because fans were still giving Stone Cold positive reactions when he walked to the ring. But again, I found the heel turn interesting and entertaining, and I enjoy heel Steve Austin just as much as babyface Steve Austin.
Hogan has betrayed WCW. He is the third man.
Another painfully obvious one here, but one I can't leave out of this video. You know the deal, one of the biggest babyfaces of all time. Eat your vitamins, say your prayers. Hulk Hogan rose to the very top of the wrestling world by being a good guy, but all that happened in WWF. In WCW, depending on where the shows were being held, Hulk Hogan could get some pretty rough receptions, not only because he was an old WWF guy, but because he was doing the same old thing that he had done for years and years. Hulkamania wasn't totally broken in the summer of 1996, but it sure would have ended up that way if things continued the way they did. So Hogan took the opportunity to join forces with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and, well, to say there was shock would be an understatement. Hulk did toy around with the dark side the year prior, and it was comically bad, but Nash and Hall were the key to this heel turn being successful. The Outsiders' invasion felt a lot more real than what Hogan had tried to do before. They gave this group an edge and a lot more legitimacy. So everything just fell into place perfectly at Bash at the Beach 1996, and we ended up getting a true game-changing faction that's became just as legendary as WCW itself, the New World Order. Hulk Hogan's heel turn's probably the most significant and noteworthy heel turn in pro wrestling history.
Fans right here across the United States of America, I apologize for nothing.
Bret Hart's heel turn had been building up ever since around December 1996, I'd say. Shawn Michaels still had his fans, and Bret was tearing Shawn a new one frequently on TV, and in a way, it made Bret come off as a little bitter, just a little. Steve Austin was also rising up the ranks as a popular anti-hero, and Austin was getting the better of Bret on a few occasions. While Bret was eager to fight Austin and prove that the Hitman was better than Stone Cold, he would also complain quite a lot whenever he got his hands on a microphone, leading to some fans seeing Bret as a crybaby. Still though, what you have to remember here and what makes Bret's heel turn so good is the fact that Bret had a point and Bret was pretty much right. He was getting screwed over by Austin, and it did seem like Shawn was dodging Bret when it came to a fight. Bret was the victim of a lot of injustice, but Stone Cold's popularity just couldn't be denied, and Bret would have to come to terms with a lot of his old fans dismissing the excellence of execution as their hero. It all came to a head at WrestleMania 13, where both Bret and Austin's roles were solidified in what many consider to be the greatest double turn of all time. But do keep in mind that both guys were already well on this path in the run-up to WrestleMania. The WWF did gamble a little on how fans would react, but it turned out better than expected. Austin wouldn't submit to the sharpshooter, and referee Ken Shamrock had to step in and end the WrestleMania 13 submission match. Bret, however, decided to attack Stone Cold after the bell, and when Shamrock took Bret down by force, the Hitman backed down, getting a lot of boos in the process. Austin, meanwhile, showed true grit when he wouldn't submit to Bret's finisher, instead losing consciousness while locked in the sharpshooter, but still never giving up. Stone Cold also refused help when getting out of the ring, preferring to walk back up the ramp by himself and getting a standing ovation in the process. Bret would explain his actions the next night on Raw, and again Bret told no lies and everything he said was true. He talked about all the times he'd been messed around in WWF since returning at the 1996 Survivor Series, and the Hitman kept it all off by saying, "It seems like a lot of fans in America don't care about him anymore, but the fact of the matter is, Bret really doesn't care too much about the American fans neither."
You need to feel my pain!
It's a bit of an interesting one here, and I think it's an example of WWE turning a negative into a positive. When the decision was made to remove Kane's mask, WWE had a bit of a problem. They had told fans for the longest time that Kane's face was disfigured. You've got two options here really. If the mask was definitely going to come off, you could apply makeup every single time Kane performed, including house shows, and that would have been extremely difficult to do. Or you could just do nothing and let Kane go out there with a face that wasn't disfigured and try to explain your way out of it. The WWE went with the latter option, and they decided a heel turn would also be necessary. So when Kane was forced to remove his mask on Raw, a storyline was built around Kane's mental state that was actually pretty well done, all things considered. Kane was mentally disfigured. He had hidden behind the mask out of fear that people wouldn't accept him, and in doing this, he had somehow convinced himself that his face was a mess. When it was pointed out to Kane that there was nothing wrong with how he looks, he would think that people were downplaying the severity of his illness, and this is how WWE would once again solidify Kane as a heel. Jim Ross tried to show Kane empathy, but Kane was having none of it. He would end up setting good old JR on fire when Ross questioned his perceived disfigurement, and Kane would go on a rampage soon afterwards where he was reborn as a monster in WWE, something he hadn't been for quite a few years. Personally speaking, I prefer the old original Kane, but the removal of Kane's mask I thought was handled very well, and reverting Kane back to being an intimidating and unstoppable force in WWE was a good call. It gave the character many more years in the company.
There's always a plan B.
I'm not sure if it was just me that thought this, but when the Shield was getting heavily featured in WWE, I sometimes felt that Seth Rollins didn't get as much recognition as Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose. Roman was always given a little more than the other guys, being a big powerhouse that the WWE took a liking to, and Ambrose managed to get himself highlighted due to how unpredictable and unstable he could be from time to time in the ring. Seth Rollins was given the name the Architect, the guy who puts it all together away from the ring, the planner of the group, the guy who gives the Shield their tactical edge, the man who comes up with the blueprints. So you've got the powerhouse, the chaotic brawler, and the high-flying technician. In my opinion, Seth was the most naturally talented in-ring competitor of the trio, yet it felt to me that more people would talk about his Shield teammates, and hey, I could be totally wrong here, but that's how I remember it. Still though, the trio would become very popular in WWE, but it was Seth who would destroy the Shield when he famously became Triple H's Plan B. Seth hit Roman with a steel chair and Ambrose couldn't believe what he was seeing, so Dean got taken out too, and Seth would join Triple H in the Authority while also becoming one of the biggest heels WWE had to offer. It's a heel turn that would get replayed often, and no one saw it coming. It turned out to be highly beneficial to Seth in terms of his position in the company, but in saying that, every member of the Shield would prosper in one way or another. A good heel turn though, and it created a singles main eventer in just one night.
The Rock never sold out. The Rock just got ahead.
The Rock's 1998 heel turn at Survivor Series was so good because it really was so unexpected. Rock was on the path to becoming one of WWF's top babyfaces alongside Steve Austin, and everything pointed to Rocky becoming a big-time fan favourite at the end of the year. Survivor Series 1998 featured the Deadly Game tournament. The winner of the tournament would become the new WWF champion, and in the finals, Rock would become champion for the first time in his career, but he also got a little assistance from Vince McMahon. A reenactment of the Montreal Screwjob took place, and Vince ordered the timekeeper to ring the bell when Rock put Mankind in the sharpshooter. Keep in mind that Mankind thought he was in Vince's good books when all this went down. Fans had wanted to cheer for Rocky, but all that was taken away when the People's Champion became the Corporate Champion. I feel this is an interesting one because it bucked tradition. You knew The Rock was going to become a huge babyface star because fans couldn't get enough of him during this time period. But the WWF pulled off a great swerve at Survivor Series 1998, and the heel turn ended up being a lot of fun because, well, they got us good. All this would set up a WrestleMania match featuring Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, beginning a WrestleMania trilogy that will go down in history as one of the WWE's best.
Because I didn't get a chance to win the tag belts because of you, but I can count on myself.
It's remembered for Owen's little verbal slip-up at the end, unfortunately, but Owen turning his back on Bret at the 1994 Royal Rumble will always be memorable to me because, as a kid, I remember feeling really bad for Bret. The Hart brothers had a few issues when little brother Owen got eliminated in a Survivor Series match that featured the Hart family taking on Shawn Michaels and the Knights, originally supposed to be Jerry Lawler and the Knights. Over the holiday season, it was revealed that the Harts had put their differences aside and Owen was back on track. The Hitman and his little bro were going to try to win the tag team championships at the 1994 Royal Rumble when they took on the Quebecers. Bret hurt his knee during the match and he tried to persevere. He was unable to apply his sharpshooter though and he couldn't stand up. The referee decided to stop the match and award the victory to Jacques and Pierre. Owen yelled at Bret for not tagging out and then Owen attacked his older brother. It was so well put together too because Owen cut a promo on Bret that was aired on the big screens as the Hitman was being helped to the back. Owen was rubbing salt in the wounds by berating his brother while he clearly needed medical attention. But then Owen has his little slip up when he says he kicked Bret's leg out of his leg, and that line kinda overshadows the whole heel turn now. Still, this is one that resonated with me when I was younger, and it's pretty fun to go back and watch now. Owen and Bret would collide at WrestleMania 10, and Owen was able to beat his big brother on the WWF's biggest stage.
He's sick and tired of you and what you stand for.
A lot of hearts were broken when Andre the Giant showed up to Piper's Pit on the 7th of February 1987 with Bobby Heenan. In order to build up their legendary WrestleMania 3 match, Hogan and Andre were guests on Piper's talk show segment, and if you put yourself back in that time period, and if you remember the influence Hogan had as a babyface, then you might be able to appreciate the emotion of this heel turn. Hulk Hogan was already on set, and when Andre walked out with Heenan, the Hulkster was in complete disbelief. Putting Bobby Heenan with Andre though was a stroke of genius genius because Heenan was the mouthpiece of the WWF at the time, so the brain speaking on behalf of Andre made this a whole lot more impactful. A few weeks earlier, Hogan was presented with a trophy to commemorate 3 years since the Hulkster won the WWF Championship. Andre made an appearance during Hogan's speech. He said 3 years is a long time to be champion, and he gave Hulk a very firm handshake that threw Hogan off a little. Back in the primetime studio, Bobby Heenan wanted to know where Andre's trophy was, and Gorilla Monsoon said Andre's had plenty of accolades throughout his career. So the following week, WWF gave Andre a trophy, a smaller trophy as pointed out by Bobby Heenan, but Hulk Hogan would come out and Hogan more or less steals Andre's spotlight, not intentionally mind you. Hogan wouldn't stop talking about how great it was that WWF gave Andre a trophy, but the big man didn't want to hear it and Andre walked away. The following week, both trophies were brought to Piper's Pit and Jesse Ventura pointed out the size difference in the trophies, while saying that Hulk Hogan's went out of his way to dodge certain challengers like Andre the Giant. So Ventura says that he's gonna bring Andre to Piper's Pit the following week, while Piper says that he'll get Hogan. Andre walks out the next week with Heenan. Hogan's in pure shock and he pours his red and yellow heart out to Andre. Hogan can't believe the Giant would side with Bobby Heenan, a man who's caused nothing but problems for Hulk and all the Hulkamaniacs. Andre was the reason Hogan wanted to become a wrestler. He's Hogan's role model, and to see him with Bobby Heenan is tearing Hogan apart. Heenan says that Hogan used Andre throughout his career. All Andre got was a small trophy, and even then Hogan got jealous, so he had to run out and steal Andre's spotlight. Not once did Hulk Hogan ever give Andre a title shot, and Andre's gonna challenge Hogan to a WrestleMania match right here on Piper's Pit. Hogan says he and Andre are friends. Andre tells Hogan to get his hands off his shoulders, and then Andre makes the challenge official before ripping the shirt off Hogan's back and ripping the cross off that Hogan wears around his neck. Hogan bleeds here. It was totally unintentional, but it added a lot to the promo, and it's Roddy Piper who has to console Hulk and get him back on his feet. A memorable heel turn and one that worked very, very well. Hunter's turned heel a few times in his career, but the one that pissed me off the most was when he turned on Shawn Michaels in 2002. Being a big fan of 1997 WWF, I was very excited when D-Generation X were set to make their return in the summer of 2002. Triple H had made a triumphant return to WWE at the beginning of the year, while Shawn Michaels returned as part of the NWO. When the NWO angle fell apart, Triple H and Shawn Michaels decided to realign with each other. On the July 22nd, 2002 episode of Raw, HBK was down and out after Eric Bischoff told him he had to be Triple H's manager or he can leave WWE. Shawn said he was gonna leave, Triple H had to talk him out of it, and a little later on, Triple H gave Shawn a shirt to wear because the two were gonna go down to the ring and cut a promo. The DX theme music plays in the arena, the crowd goes crazy, and the Game and the Heartbreak Kid turned back the clock by bringing D-Generation X back to the world of wrestling. I fell for this hook, line and sinker, by the way. I had no idea what was coming. Shawn said just when you thought it was safe to put on the old Groblin show, DX are back in town. Triple H takes the mic and he goes through his "Are you ready?" routine. He finishes up and then he kicks HBK and he hits him with a thunderous pedigree. D-Generation X would not reunite on this evening. As a matter of fact, fans would have to wait another 4 years before DX got back together. But this would all lead to Shawn Michaels returning to in-ring action at SummerSlam 2002. Oh yeah, before that happened, Triple H tried to swerve everyone again by showing concern when Shawn was attacked backstage. He promised to find out who did it and make whoever did it pay dearly for their crimes. But it turned out to be Triple H himself who jumped his old friend. Fantastic.
Those eyes right there! Those eyes lost Elizabeth.
This one was so memorable because it was done in such a way that was actually pretty believable. Randy Savage's 1989 heel turn was all about Macho's own insecurities and Macho's inability to control both his jealousy and his temper. He and Hulk Hogan had created a successful tag team known as the Megapowers, and the Megapowers were insanely popular with younger audiences. They were truly a babyface dream team that featured two of the very best the WWF had to offer at the time. But the Megapowers would explode in dramatic fashion, and this would all lead to a big WrestleMania main event where it could be argued the build-up was actually better than the match itself. Randy thought that Hulk Hogan was getting a little too friendly with Miss Elizabeth, and he was picking up on a few things that Randy felt went beyond a professional relationship. The heel turn took place on the February 3rd, 1989 episode of the main event. The Megapowers wrestled Kane and the Big Boss Man. Savage bumped into Liz got knocked out, and Hulk Hogan decided to stop the match and carry Liz away to get medical attention. The Macho Man was left all on his own to fight two men, while Hogan seemed way more interested in Miss Elizabeth. Liz told Hogan to go back and help Randy, but Randy was so angry with Hogan that he decided to slap him in the face instead and walk away from the match. Hogan, of course, defeated Akeem and the Big Boss Man single-handedly, but he hurried back to check on Miss Elizabeth. Randy was already there giving Liz a hard time, and then the Macho Man let it all out. He accused Hogan of trying to steal Miss Elizabeth away from him. He felt like he was taking a back seat in the Megapowers, and when Hogan told Liz to talk some sense into Randy, the Macho Man launched an attack and Savage turned heel. The partnership was over, the feud had begun, and as mentioned, this would culminate in a WrestleMania match that, of course, Hulk Hogan won. Many would say that Randy was justified in turning heel and it was actually Hulk Hogan who was the villain in all this. A key trait to being a good heel is that heel has to believe that they're in the right, and by all accounts, Randy had good reason to be annoyed. But this would turn out to be another very memorable turn, and it was one of the better storylines WWF produced in the late 80s. That's going to do it for this one, and I had a lot of fun going back and watching these heel turns while capturing footage, so yeah, I had a good time with this. Let me know some of your favourite heel turns, and also, as a challenge, maybe let me know some of your favourite babyface turns too. We talk a lot about good guys turning into villains, but for many babyface turns it can be quite difficult sometimes to pinpoint the exact moment when the turn happened. Usually it's more of a natural progression or a slow build over time due to fan support, but if there's any that stuck out for you, let me know in the comments. I'm sure a heel to babyface video will get released eventually. I hope you enjoyed this one, thank you for watching, only turn heel if you really need to, and take care.